All right, the recording is on.
All right.
Ronnie, just let me know when you're ready to go and I'll stop sharing so you can take over.
I think I am ready when you are.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Go ahead and share my screen. All right, can everybody see it okay?
Yes.
All right, so welcome everybody. To get everybody kind of in the mindset of what we're looking at here, imagine you're starting this as like the beginning of your annual report season. And so you come here to this page from like the main homepage of NRS. You've clicked on like a little box that says, view annual report home. So from here, you will be able to see in the future all of your previous annual reports. Just as a note, we're not going to upload any previous ones as of yet, but in the future, you'll be able to see them here and access them. So this is where we're hosting all of the annual report building process and everything that goes around along with that. So to do that, we're going to get into this and we're going to hit create new. So we're going to imagine we are creating the annual report for Georgia for 2021, for fiscal year 2021. So hit create new. And now we are kind of in the report has been created. The starting page here, you'll be able to see who the directors are that are need to sign off on this, as well as the contributing organizations, since we know that many states have multiple organizations contributing to the same annual report. Additionally, you'll also see this table of contents down here. So this is everything that goes along with the annual report process. And so if you're here for the first time, you can click on any of these to go to that section. Or if you're coming back, it's a quick way to kind of get back into where you left off. But since this is our first pass through this, we're just starting, we're going to go ahead and hit the start button. This takes us into the actual building of the report itself. So here you've got the executive summary. You'll have an overview box to kind of just put information about the report, about your state or institution, those types of things. And you can see there's some helper text here to help on what goes in each of these boxes. And then down the rest of the page, you'll have boxes that relate to each of the critical issues that your state has. And so using that space to have a summary of the overall progress achieved against that particular critical issue. What I do want to point out here is that each of these boxes, we have instituted auto-saving for these boxes. We're hoping to roll out auto-saving across the rest of the experience, but for right now, it's just in the annual report. And what does that mean? What that means is once you start typing into each of these boxes, you will then see this little saving right here message to let you know that it is saving your work in the back end. And then you'll get this little green saved message when it has saved successfully. This is to help, since we know that this report, you're going to be up in the screen a lot. We're going to be working and typing a lot on these screens. We want to make sure that through either an accidental click or a timeout or something that you don't lose any work. I will also note that when you're clicking this to next section button, or you click any of these things in the table of contents, that will also additionally save your work just in case. So making sure that absolutely nothing is getting lost. That's the hope, at least. So this is the executive summary page. Move on to the next page, which is the merit and scientific peer review process. This should look really similar to annual reports you've done in the past, or structured to annual reports that you've done in the past. So just as a note, all of the text boxes have that auto-saving feature. Then stakeholder input sections, much like before. And again, each of these boxes have helper text at the bottom to help understand what goes in each of these boxes more specifically. And that information can be looked at kind of once we've launched this. So after the stakeholder input, it's results by project or program, which is the fun part. So on this page here, you will see it's broken. These next couple of pages are broken up by research projects, extension programs, and other projects and programs. And we'll get to the other here in a second. So what I want to talk about here on this research project page is, on this page, you will see every research project that is currently active in the fiscal year of 2021. You will also see that we've got a marker here for results. Those that are the results that are entered in for this fiscal year only. So let's say that this project had 4 results from previous fiscal years, they would not show up here. And so the idea with this page is that they're organized by critical issue, and then you can go through and pretty easily see which projects of these need a result entered for this particular fiscal year. So this is every single project that is active will need a result or a progress report. We're calling them results. To aid in this, because I know there are some states that have upwards of 300 or 400 or 500 projects, we have this button here that says view projects with 0 results. And so you can click on that and it will filter the list so that it will only show projects that have 0 results. You can pretty easily see which ones, if any, you're missing. So let's say, we'll look through all of these and it looks like we're good to go, but I want to check because there's a whole bunch of them. So I click this button and let's say, hey, good job. We have a project. We have a result for all of these for this fiscal year. Clicking that again will just take you back to the other view. We do have this search bar here where you can search by basically everything that you can search from the projects and programs page. So to help and assist in understanding and finding particular projects that you want to take a look at. The most important thing I think on this page is when you're opening up this thing here, opening up this dropdown, is you'll be able to see the results that have been entered for this fiscal year. And you have the opportunity here to highlight a result or multiple results for projects. And so this is bringing in the idea of, hey, this result for this project was really awesome. It's a really great representation of the work that our state is doing, and we want to show that off. So you highlight those that you want to talk about. We'll get to highlighting a little bit later during the review section. I will note that only results that are past the draft state will show up here. So if you have a result or somebody has a result that's in a draft state, hasn't been submitted or anything yet, it won't show up here. And if that's the case, then it's pretty easy to see the organization and project director to go talk to them of hey, go submit your result. Additionally, if you're working through this and maybe you have a project director that can't get access to the system, you do have the ability here to add a result yourself, which will take you to that results process that we have shown in previous weeks. All right, so this is just the research projects section, as mentioned. So the next section is extension programs. So same thing here, you have the ability to open these up and highlight particular results, and you have the option to change the list so that you can view with 0 results. And then the section of the other projects or programs. So this is where we're putting, this is kind of the catch-all for everything, but it also is a way to kind of call out specific things. So this is where we would locate the projects and programs that maybe don't have a critical issue just yet. We'd put them here. This is also where we're housing multi-state projects and integrated projects and programs, just so that we've kind of pulled them out of that really big list. You're not trying to hunt or search for them, since I have heard from a couple of people that especially those multi-state integrated ones end up being ones that we want to highlight. So giving you that option to have them here. I didn't actually I forgot to point this out. So I'll go back to real quick. So you can see that this table of contents is actually updating depending on what page I'm on to give you further context as to what you're looking at. And so what you'll be able to do is by clicking on extension programs, it'll take you to that page, or clicking back. You can also click on any of the critical issue titles here and it'll jump you down the page to that section of that critical issue. Now, it's not something that I can actually do in this particular prototyping software itself, but what we will have is this table of contents will follow you down the page. So what that means is when I hit here, this table of contents will stay static right where it is, and all of this content here will scroll down with you. So you always have that kind of quick teleporting ability, so you can jump around the entire system as needed and very quickly. And let's say you're on this research projects page and you're scrolling down. If you hit that research projects, it'll just bring you back to the top of the page. So you always have a back to top on those pages that could get really long. All right, I'm going to jump through these two real quick, and now we're going to go to the review section. So the review section is where you have the opportunity to review over the entire report as other people are going to be reviewing this report. And so giving the ability to read it top to bottom. exactly how the hope that you want. So we've kind of surfaced the contributing organizations and directors here. And then you can read straight down the page everything that has been typed so far for each of these sections. We're also giving you the opportunity where if you're like, oh, hey, wait, I made a typo here, or this didn't look right, I can click edit and it'll take you back to that page so you can change what was needed. But what I want to show here, scroll down through all of these, is this is the section of the highlighted results by project or program. And so when we were highlighting those results on a different page, it's showing up here. And so you have the ability to see all of the projects and programs they're separated out by critical issue. You can see the organization and project director. And when you open them up, the results that's been highlighted will be shown in full text. So it's really easy to kind of read through top to bottom exactly what's being shown. The one really cool thing that we've added here for this year is the opportunity to have an impact statement. And so we heard that there was a lot of talk around some of our academics don't write super well. We want to be able to talk about, what this result means to the general public, kind of describe it in layman's terms. So we're giving you the opportunity to do that here without actively changing what the academic has put in for their result, because that we also heard that we don't want to kind of change what they've written. So this is kind of an in addition statement. So every result that you highlight, you will get the opportunity to write an impact statement for, and to write about what types of the impact that the result had, and that'll be included in the report. You can highlight as many things as you want to highlight, and that impact statement is optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but giving you the opportunity so that all of the really important things that have been highlighted are here. From other discussions, we've heard a lot of really great things of how we can bring highlighting to the rest of the site. And that's something that we're absolutely considering and have on our list to talk about. But for right now, this is what we're sticking with. And then at the bottom of the page, we just have the appendix, which is those research projects and extension programs that were shown on those other pages, just as like a, hey, we're here, we're good to go. Scrolling back to the top of the page, if you have the ability, if you are that role that has the ability to sign this report, so if you're like a director, you can sign the report. If there are multiple directors that need to sign a report before it gets submitted, you'll be able to see like this. So I click sign. You'll be able to see who has and hasn't signed the report, just so that you know that, hey, I signed this, I'm good with it, but it's not been submitted yet. And so whoever that last person is that signs it, that's when it will get officially submitted. So you'll get this nice little confirmation page of good job. And we know that everybody wants to be able to print out a copy of this report. And so that can be done not from this section, but from a different section, which I will go to right now, where let's say that this is annual report 2021 that we just did. So I'm going to click on it. There it goes. And so you'll be able to review this report top to bottom. And when you scroll down the page, all of the projects will be listed here as in with their full text. So there's no drop downs. And so it's going to be a very long page, but you'll be able to see everything top to bottom. And with this nice print button right here at the top, you'll be able to print out a copy for your records. So I definitely went through that pretty quickly. But we're very, very excited about the opportunity that this brings, and hopefully some of the questions that maybe some of you have been answered to some degree. So I think do we have an hour for this, or is it 30 minutes?
It's an hour.
Well, I'm more than happy to kind of go over questions and answer some like maybe flow things that we've been talking about. I see the chat has a lot of messages in it, and I can't see what those are just yet. But I'm happy to go over questions.
Nice job, Ronnie.
Yeah, thank you, Ronnie. All right. Thank you to all of you who waited till she was done. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat box now and we'll go through them.
Yes, and for those who joined us a little late, we are recording, so you should be able to review this later. We certainly recognize that it sometimes is difficult to track every single thing and to remember all that you have seen. as we get this more formalized, and in our next webinar, we'll have another chance to look at it, and we'll be producing materials and FAQs and guides that will just help anchor and reinforce this information. So please don't feel like this is your last chance. We'll keep reminding people and providing info out there. Just a reminder, the May 2nd is the deadline for the annual report of accomplishments and results. And so we are working diligently to have that early enough for you to complete that. So we're targeting early April.
So do we?
Yeah, before we go to the chat box, Jaime, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Ronnie, for the presentation. Very clear. I had a question. I was following one of the previous seminars that you guys provided, and I started to practice while you guys were presenting, and I realized that I wasn't unable. I created a project, but then after I created it, I realized that I wasn't able to delete it. And it's still there, and I'm worried that that you guys probably review it or something. I wrote test, not actual project, but it's still there. I don't know if there is a way to delete it.
Jaime, just send that to the NRS email with the specific link of the project. You did the right thing labeling it as, to delete or for deletion. We'll be able to take care of that, and eventually we'll give you all the ability to remove projects that are in draft and results that are in draft. But the most important thing is to consider that if these things are in draft, or if they have a start date outside of the reporting period, it won't be included in the annual report. So if you created a project today, as long as the start date wasn't obviously earlier, you're fine. Those wouldn't show up in the annual report. With the results, the trick there is don't promote the result into the org review process, into the org review step.
Thanks a lot.
All right, let's go to the chat. All right, so I think we answered Lynn's question. Yes, the research projects show up separately from extension.
Ronnie, would you mind going to that page? I did see that question. I wanted to give, there's a lot of stuff that's hard to see or orient towards, but we are going to let you know which ones is a research project and which one's an extension. We're using the shorthand of project versus program. Usually we say research project and extension program. We could add research as an indicator if that would help you. And it's obviously based on the funding source selected. So, certainly take that point. Let us know how you feel about it. But under the critical issue, you should be seeing both, but in different sections. So you'll have research by critical issue, then extension by critical issue.
I think the next question in the chat down, it's from Rachel, are the multi in both the projects list by CI and in the other listing? I think what you're asking is, are they in this other section and then also in these other two sections as well? And yes, they are, just as a way to kind of pull them out of that list. Does that answer your question, Rachel?
That was exactly my question. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. The next one down is Lynn, show again where to find a research projects that don't have a critical issue. Of course, it'll be in this other projects and programs section under this type here that says projects programs without a critical issue.
And Ronnie, and I think there was a question down below. Can they highlight those?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I can't, again, this program is a prototype, so it's really fancy photos. But anytime that you click this down arrow here on any of these cards, it will look like this. where that if there is a result for this fiscal year, it'll be here, and you will have the ability to highlight it regardless of what kind of like section it's under, whether it's a project or program or it's under the other section, you'll be able to.
Now, I want to highlight here that the reason that we are pulling them into this other section is because when we first integrated critical issues into report, not all projects were updated immediately. It wasn't a requirement. And we know that those projects will, close out before too much longer. And we mass rush and flood of a bunch of requests for approval on adding a critical issue in this year because we're in a transition. So they will still be there. And especially if you want to highlight them, that's very easy to do. And when you look at the summary view, all the highlighted ones come together. And so they're very easy to digest there. In terms of other projects that don't have maybe a significant result this year, they are still there. They're just not clustered by the specific critical issue. And you might want to update that, but this year, maybe not so much.
I will add, because I think Catherine had a very similar question, is on this page, if you highlight a project or a program that doesn't have a critical issue, or if it's a multi-state project or an integrated project, it'll show up in this list looking similar like this, but it'll say, instead of critical issue, it'll say type, and then, without a critical issue or multi-state, it'll have that header there and it'll be separated out in those sections. Sunshine asked, how did you see who signed and who hadn't? And so on this final page, you'll be able to see it here. I forgot to update the sketches, so I will show you behind the curtain a little bit. And so let's say that you have submitted your annual report 2021, and let's say I'm James Kirk and I have signed off on it. That annual report 2021 will then show up in that main page list. So when you click on it, then you can see here who has and hasn't signed it. In future years, like if you're viewing a report from 2021, it's not like trying to actively be signed. That's when it's shown without that like signed, not signed thing, just for clarity.
So you got to that by clicking on the sign as if you were actively signing it yourself?
So there's two ways to view like who has signed it. The first way is to sign it yourself. And so that's by clicking that. I will go back one. It's by, nope, there you go. It's by clicking this sign here. I love how everything is in order. Apologies. So that's by clicking this sign report button right here. So I myself am signing it. Now I can see who signed it. And then the other way, and so this is also the way for everybody to be able to see who has and hasn't signed it, is you would go to this main page here, and I would be able to see Georgia Annual Report 2021. I can click on that because the status would be either draft or like org review. I'd be able to click on that card there, and it would show me this page in which I would be able to see who has and hasn't signed it there.
I see. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to go back to this critical issue and what you do with your projects that do not have critical issues, because we migrated them and there was not a critical issue assigned when they were still in report. If you update those projects, they have to go through NIFA review, and it's going to slow down your ability to complete this process. So if you all can hold off, I would highly recommend it. We are now trying to get caught up with all of these new extension submissions. The NPLs are trying to get new RFAs out. And so I just don't want you guys to get held up because a project doesn't have a critical issue. If you want to do one or two, we can get those pushed through the review process, but it's not going to happen overnight right now. So just take that into account. Next year, we'll get caught up. We've got some functionality that we want to add into the NRS that will allow you to update those critical issues without it going back through NIFA review. But we don't have that feature in there right now, and we don't have the bandwidth to build it. We have got to stay focused on getting this annual report builder done so we can meet the internal deadlines that we have for getting these all processed. So additional quarters of funding to you all don't get held up. So if you can just be patient, we'll get through this process. We have a nice solution with that other projects and programs section. And if you want to highlight something that doesn't have a critical issue, it will definitely be read by the reviewer. So if you can just bear with us this year and next year, these things will all be ironed out. Thank you.
Hey, Lynn, it's Joanne. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So just to that point, so if a project doesn't have a critical issue, but you want it in your annual report, you can choose it. But so would it make sense to maybe put a note that it applies to a specific critical issue, you know, at the beginning, or I don't know, what do you think? Because
If you wanted to do that, or you could actually put it in the impact statement, I think is what Ronnie's indicating. The other way to do it is put it in the critical issue box. It's in the executive summary, if you want to highlight it there.
Yeah, and you could probably reference it inside the result where it says describe the issue. You could probably mention that there.
Awesome. So I'll jump back to the chat for now with questions. So I think this is a Lynn and Aaron question here. Lisa says there's no place to fill out demographic data for participants like the old annual report. Will we be asked for this at any point?
We're not asking for the tables, that quantitative data. Ronnie, how hard is it for you to open up the results form?
Not super hard. Give me 1 second to find it.
We're asking about recipients in a slightly different way. The demographics, we will be building that module eventually, but for now, so we have 2 boxes in your results. Briefly describe how your target audience benefited, and then briefly describe how the broader public. If you want to put in information there, you know, your target audience would be your direct beneficiaries and your broader public would be indirect. So if you've collected data and it supports the story that you're trying to tell about your accomplishments, for sure, put it in those sections.
Awesome.
Well, this is a fun one.
Yeah, so Meredith asks, can annual report be submitted if there are progress reports missing? No, the annual report will not be able to be submitted if there is not a result, at least one result for every project. We are giving everybody the opportunity to either have a result, so what we're showing on this page here. We also have this nothing significant to report. So if something happened and you with the pandemic going on, was not able to do anything with it, having the ability to do that there, in which all you need is a titled fiscal year and some comments with that. Aaron, did you want to add anything?
Well, I think, just think through this year. This is a transition year. It's a new data collection to some degree. So we certainly, want to give you the information to know which projects are keeping up and which ones aren't. That's why we've focused on that toggle there. So you need to do your very best to try to complete the information.
Looks like Lynn Laws has a question. for a
Thank
follow-up.
you. Thanks, Ronnie. Did I just hear you say that I can't submit my college annual report until all of my project directors have entered results for 2021?
Aaron, back me up here if I get this incorrect, but as far as I'm aware, yeah, they all need to have results for all of them.
Well, that's going to be a huge problem.
Or select no results to report.
This is Diane. I thought that was a misspoken, that you meant that there has to be one result per critical issue. If we have to go into all the research projects that don't have one, then I guess just check that no results box.
And unfortunately, I have about 35 project directors who drag their feet regardless of the date you give them. And unfortunately, they often don't get included in my college end report, but I'm helpless to do anything about that. But eventually I do get the report.
Well, I don't know if this is going to make you feel any better, Lynn, but NIFA is going to be a little stricter about making sure projects that were funded submit an annual report. So those of you who are involved in financial reporting may have noticed this already. OGFM has been asking universities to submit older reports that were never submitted. So whether we enforce it in the system or we enforce it by email.
Well, see, there again, I guess you're getting the financial situation confused, because I can have a project that was developed as a hatch project with the intention of being able to use hatch funds if needed, but never spend any money on it in a particular year from hatch funds.
Well, then you could just mark the no results to report.
But that's not true. There'd be results to report, at least if the way NIF is handled in the past, it didn't matter where the funding came from. If it was a hatch project that was developed, they asked us to, talk about all the efforts done regardless of where the funding came from. And that's how we've always done it. So this is a big, big change if we're no longer going to do that.
The terms and conditions, I believe, require projects that were initiated to submit some sort of annual report, even if that involves marking no results to report.
But Lynn, what I'm saying is there will be results to report. They're just tardy in getting them in.
Well, okay, we'll have to talk about this internally.
Yeah.
It's above my pay
Yeah, why don't we?
grade, so.
Yeah, this is good feedback. Why don't we take it back? And we'll get the final decision point. I think, Lynn, what you're saying, Lynn Laws, is that, of course, you want to have the complete picture there. We'd love to see it. And we're trying to create flexibility in the system, but also keep to deadlines, because obviously if we let people go too long, they may never really do it. So point taken. And hopefully you guys have a lot of visibility through this, to find out where your areas of, difficulty might lie and see what you can, start addressing.
Well, yeah, and I have been addressing them for quite some time, and people are beginning to understand that that my report that I have to do is dependent on whether I get their report and whether they get included in my report.
Right.
Yeah, but having to mark them, because you said, I also understand that once you mark nothing to report for the year, you can't add a result.
Once you've marked nothing to report for one result for a fiscal year, you are allowed to add another result that doesn't have that nothing to report box. like checked. I think what we are only limiting in the system is having multiple nothing to report results for the same project or program for the same fiscal year.
Okay.
But if the annual report has already been submitted and somebody puts a result in it, I mean, does it ever get approved or anything? What does it do? Just sit there?
That's going to be a Lynn question.
Yeah, and what in the past they did, frankly, they just sat there.
Sorry,
Probably people never got to
Patty
see
Gala.
them. The only person who got to see them was me. And so maybe next year when I did my annual report, I could be sure that I was going to include something. And, you know, if it was found out later that, you know, it was really something significant that they had done and got the report in late, then the following year I'd chase them down and I'd get something for
Right.
the next year.
Ronnie,
Yeah, so their annual deadlines with the report, with reporting, right? So we, you know, any result that doesn't make it in prior to your annual report not being there is not going to make it into that annual report, obviously. We can look, you know, as we kind of get into the swing of things to see if it makes sense to, you know, add another result. The intent is that for every project, you'd be adding a result every fiscal year. So if you didn't get a result in this year, Lynn, you can hit the nothing to report. That's not precluding you from adding a result later on. And if that later on turns into be something that gets included, you know, if you're like right on the threshold of this year or the findings come out next year, you know, that could then just be included in the next year's pending, you know, the date that's available or the date that's entered.
But then, so for this year anyway, I'll need to make sure that if I haven't gotten, faculty haven't submitted their reports for whatever reports show 0 results, I'll need to go in to all of those and indicate nothing to report.
Right, like Ronnie said at the kickoff, if your result, I mean, if you don't have a result, like it's not going to be able to be highlighted and pulled into the annual report. So there has to be a result to start.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
there's also a feature in the results where you can select the fiscal year for that result. So let's say you have a project director who just doesn't give you anything for this year, and they come back to you 6 months from now, you can go back in and add it. And if you want to assign it to FY21, you can do that as long as there's a project in there to report against.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So that-
Yeah. And Lynn, it's usually not 6 months later. It's usually, you know, 3-4 weeks later.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a transition, and there should be an incentive to get these results to you, because then they can be brought to the attention of NIFA. We do have NPLs who will go back in and look for projects in their area of expertise. Our NPL for water is one of those people who voluntarily goes in even when he doesn't have projects to review, and he'll go in and hunt around. And now that we've got the KAs in there, the knowledge areas, we're seeing more activity by the NPLs. So obviously they'll read the highlighted projects in the report. I think a lot of them will look at the other lists and get a sense of the overall portfolio of work that you all are doing. And then maybe next year, you'll get more cooperation from your project directors, because they'll see this beautifully laid out report that will make it much easier for NIFA to see the full array of work you all do under this funding. So,
And
Hey, Lynn,
I have to say too, Lynn, that I think my faculty, once they see this, that what you're really looking after, you know, is to see some results and hear their story, I think they will be. I hope. Maybe I'm just too optimistic, but I think they will come in and more quickly do their report, especially since I understand, that they could do this report anytime during the year, that they have some significant results to report.
Yeah, and that's a nice thing about this. You can go in at any time and assign a result to a fiscal year. So I think there are a lot of advantages you guys will discover with this system.
Lynn, if we click on the nothing to report button, does the project director for that research project get an automated email from the system that says that button has been clicked?
I don't think so, but that's a great idea.
Well, I don't know
Highlight.
if it is a great idea. Because will that, like Terry F in the chat said, will that encourage them to just think that they don't need to submit anything, like ever?
The intent of that button is it's essentially for projects that may be just starting, or any, projects or programs, like how much was put on hold due to COVID, like if something is legitimately has a purpose to be put on hold, then yes, you may not have a result to enter. What Ronnie, I want to be clear what Ronnie said. The functionality of the system is such that if you click nothing to report 1 year, the system's not going to let you click that the next year. You can't do multiple iterations of nothing to report. So no one should be getting in their head that they can just, go ahead and not report any outcomes to their
But I
project.
thought she said that was within the same fiscal year. Is that not what she said?
Right. So we're preventing it so that it's not a redundancy, correct, in the same fiscal year. Now, we have to have some broader discussions, right? If you say nothing to report for every single year, someone is going to say, wait a minute, right? And so that's part of the annual report process in the review. This first year, we only have 1 year of data.
All right. Yes, we are working on an instruction guide. We should have that out shortly.
Real quick, Jaime, did you have your hand up still from the last time, or do you have a new question? Because it's been up for a while and I just want to double check.
Yeah, my arm is struggling. I had a question regarding to the screen that you were showing, where it shows back to report builder home. Is that like a beta test software that you are using, or that's the which we should see our screens?
So what you are seeing right now is exactly what you will be seeing in the system itself. And so there might be a couple of things here and there that I have missed in these mockups that might be a little different than what you'll be seeing there. So the idea with this back to report builder home is just giving you an opportunity of, like, at any point in this experience, this header stays consistent, so you know exactly what report you're working on and when. And you can at any point in the experience go back to this home button just to leave if you need to, like, oh, I need to take a break or whatever, that kind of a thing.
Okay, because as soon as I get inside the NRS reporting system, the first thing I see is the 4 options, which are the dashboard, critical issues, projecting programs, and manage roles. How do I get to that point where I can actually start working on the annual report?
Great question. It's something I didn't show here, but yeah, there's 4 boxes. There are going to be 5 boxes now, and the 5th box is annual report builder. And clicking on that box will bring you to this page here.
And that 5th box is not on, Jet?
Right. It's not yet. It is not currently on there. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Great relief. Thanks. That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
So Linda, Michael, you asked about multi-state projects. Are you talking about research multi-state or extension?
I was asking about like the research multi-state, like do we, if a faculty's on that, we entered in, or Is that gonna be automatically entered in from the NIM?
We will eventually have an audit feed. Aaron, why don't you jump in here? Because we did an update last week, but I think there's some nuances Aaron needs to explain.
Okay, wait, on the update, which update? Sorry, Lynn.
Catch multi-state. The
Okay.
automation of the updates.
Oh, right. So in the past, we moved over chunks of updates every so often, ever since we released the NIMS integration. And when I say that was probably October, November timeframe. Since that time, again, it's been in waves. Now it will be every night we'll get updates. So if you're still missing something as of tomorrow, please let us know what you're missing, and so we can investigate to see why it's not over and available for you. We apologize that sometimes there's been some gaps, maybe weeks, since the last batch of updates were brought over, but now we've wiped that away, and you should see new projects that are approved or changes every single day. Do we want to move to some more chat and then come
There's
back?
another hand raised. I can't actually see your name. I apologize.
Is it Melissa?
It's me, guys. It's Missy. So this is just a quick question because I missed our last call last week regarding publications in the comment section. I've got some PIs that are very, very productive, and it takes me over that 8,000 character limit pretty quickly. So would you suggest just adding another result for that same project to continue adding publications until I get them all in there?
Missy, that's not a bad idea. I'd be curious, is that because you're pasting like the full citation?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, and I know that's easier. You know, this year, I don't think that's a bad idea. I think the long term is, you know, we've mentioned it'd be great if we just had a lookup service for you. So you could just drop the digital object identifier in, and then we'd be able to manage all that more easily.
Yeah, I think if you have the DOI, that'd be helpful, but I think that's a viable workaround for this year for sure.
Okay, because I'd say about half and half I have DOIs for, so I've been taking the DOIs for the ones I have and listing those, but for the ones I don't, then I have the full citation. That's how I was going to approach it, but I wanted to make sure that was acceptable.
Sounds good.
So for the rest of the text boxes in that result, would you just suggest copying and pasting what I put in the first result, or how would you handle those other text boxes down to comments? Does that make sense?
Yeah. You know, I think part of that could be in the way you title it as well. I think that'd be helpful. And you could always say, refer to, you know, original, or, you know, the first one.
That's what I was going to do, is refer to result 1 to save myself a lot of time. Thanks.
Yeah, I think as long as you feel like it, you know, is logical, that makes sense to us. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to think through it next year too.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 10 minutes left. Just want to do a quick time check. Before we get to questions in the chat, I think it'd be really helpful, since I see a couple of them here. Aaron, would you mind going over the timelines for when this will be available, and then when, like, reports and stuff are due one more time?
Right. So in typical years, March 1st used to be the deadline for progress and final reports for the previous fiscal year. That deadline got moved to April 1st for this year. So what we're asking is that, you know, the instructions are that PDs complete a result, whether it's nothing significant to report or a full-on result, by April 1st. For the plan of work streams in particular, that's really more of an incentive to make sure that all of those results are into the system and ready for consumption for the annual report builder. We intend to get the annual report builder out there early April, so it coincides with that date. And then your May 2nd is the current deadline for the annual report of accomplishments results. So if everything goes to plan, results should be in the system, and then you'll have about a month to complete all the other peripheral things, as well as highlight the results that you agree to. And we know for states that have 2 institutions in it, there's a lot of collaboration that needs to go on there. You might start preparing that. The information that we asked for last year in annual reports is largely the same as this year in terms of those other sections that you probably saw Ronnie showing. I think the differences are improvements, better organization, where we give you a section for the critical issues themselves, so you can talk a little bit more about them specifically and what's been accomplished against those goals. We find that that's going to be a better organization than just plopping it in the executive summary. And it actually came out of the idea that a lot of people actually did it that way as well. We also have the section for impacts that Ronnie showed you before, where on highlighted results, you'll be able to add additional information. Why did you highlight this? Maybe taking something that's technically very good as far as a result, but where you would want to put more of a plain language or, you know, layperson type of description. So there's lots of flexibility here. You might need to start thinking about that approach now. And then we have the full list of all of the reporting deadlines on our website. We've sent it out previously. The deck that we have here that you haven't seen much of, but we do have a full slate of resources there, links to how to get additional information, and has every detail in terms of where to do that. There is a note here that FY 2021 projects that closed out as of September 30th of last year, yes, those are all being done in report. And so we also recognize that that could create a little bit of delta between what's in NRS in terms of the results, because those projects aren't in NRS. So you would use the critical issue section to help cover that bridge, cover that gap there.
Hey, Aaron, this is Ashwani from Texas. Is it possible for you to share the today's deck? Because we want to make sure that our folks are ready, or maybe we can make some kind of a template so that they are ready to give us a feedback in their for their annual report. Because once they also they have to put the results by April 1st. But if we have the deck, then it'll be easy for me to educate them even before they start even thinking about it. So that'll be great.
Yep, all the decks are getting posted or are shared through the listserv, so you should be getting it. We had one from last week, and then we'll have another one this week. There's some overlap there. And then more formal kind of guides and FAQs are all found within the website. We are making updates currently, so keep an eye on that, because obviously as we add features, we're going to be updating those as frequently as we can. So come back often.
Terry, can you come off mute? And I'm not sure I understand what you're asking about a no result. Terry?
Oh,
You're not coming through. Do you want to write in the chat box and we'll try to answer it?
yes, I'll do that.
Oh, now I hear you.
Okay, sorry. So I couldn't get on through zoom.gov. And so I had to get on with my phone. So I'm having a lot of issues today. Okay, so if somebody mentioned earlier, if you did a no result 2 years in a row, you could not do no results 2 years in a row. Is that true?
I don't think that's really the intent. Is that common with your PDs now, that there's more than a year where they don't have results? Because I know you can kind of point that out and report as well.
No, it's only going to be common because you're forcing us to have a no result for the annual report. So I'm going to be dealing with it a lot now. And so my question really relates to, if I do a no result, and then a month later or 2 months later actually go in and do a real report for the previous year, does that then negate the back-to-back no results? Because I have faculty who I'm going to have to do no results year after year after year because their reports are going to be late.
Okay, well, why don't we take that into consideration? You know, we already mentioned that we are going to talk about it. I think we understand the situation you're in. And I think we'd also like to talk to program staff a little bit about their thoughts. You know, there's a lot of projects out there, and we know that you guys are often, you know, mediating in between, you know, the PD and, you know, your requirement to get this annual report done. So let's talk about it. We've got another webinar in a few weeks here, and we'll hopefully be able to talk more specifically about it, or we may be able to put out a little bit more guidance. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, another webinar in a few weeks, though, then we're just outside of report due time, so.
We can communicate before that.
Thank you.
Terry, I have a question though for you. So do those project directors eventually have results and they're just working on projects where it takes to year 5?
They eventually have results, yes. They're just those kinds of faculty who are always late.
You know, Lynn, sometimes, this is Lynn Laws in Iowa, sometimes that's due to the fact of they have other commitments. You know, they've taken a bunch of students out of the country for 3 months, or they have they're teaching. It becomes a significant piece during the report period. And sometimes it's just the person that doesn't ever manage to get their report done on time.
All right, that's helpful. Thank you. We'll communicate something shortly. There was a question about sharing critical issues. What do the states share in this format?
Yeah, let me cover a couple of the ways that the system's right now. So remember in 2020 or so, we moved over the results that were codified, the critical issues that were approved in the plan of work. And so at that time, we asked everyone when we moved them into NRS to please go in and make final updates to make sure they reflected your current reality. We went through another cycle and did the same thing again, but we're also finding certainly that there are places where maybe your critical issues aren't exactly right. So for this year, they are going to stay in place. We are not going to change them. But if there's an error or an issue, we'd like to hear from you before you submit your annual report. So let us know. And then in the plan of work cycle, you'll be able to do a correction, a course correction on that. And this is important for people who might be splitting their reporting. We have 5 states that were allowed to do separate annual reports and separate plans of work. But what was always the rule, this is NIFA's decision, and really it comes from the statute itself, is that the issue is owned by the state. So whether your institution is working directly on the same critical issue as another institution within the state, that's just something you would just mention. Hey, this is not something worked by our institution. As far as those who are reporting separately, you will only see results and projects from your institution in that case. For those who are reporting jointly, they will appear together. Passing. So I'm reading this one that says, excellent, I love it. In the past annual report, we were told to focus on just the changes since the 2021 POW, since we don't want to duplicate the plan of work. Is that still the preferred approach? Oh, yeah, I think, Diane, I think that's the answer is yes. So really what in the annual report process, when you're going through and talking about your different procedures and your input, right, we're looking for updates and changes from the previous period.
So I don't know where you were, Aaron, but Kathy asked, can you clarify, not expected that newly initiated projects between October 1, 2020 and September 20, 2021, that there'll be a result submitted? Yeah, that is the fiscal year that you are now reporting against. So if you initiated projects for FY 2021, they will appear in what Ronnie has on the screen. And you will put in a result or check no results to report. How long does it typically take to get a project initiation approved by NIFA? It depends on what else is going on in the institution. One of the things that we have tried to do is spread out the work so that the national program leaders are not buried in AFRI panels at the same time you all are submitting the research projects, which I'm expecting the peak of those is fourth quarter and first quarter. So we're trying to organize all these big chunks of work that we have so that they're not overlapping. And those of you who submitted Hatch and Evans Allen initiations last summer, you got caught up in that. All the NPLs that we had on staff at the time were in AFRI panels. So we're trying to coordinate that. We're also trying to automate the notices to them and get them organized. It's been a work in progress. So sometimes I can get them reviewed in a week. Sometimes it takes longer. It really just all depends on what else is going on, but I am trying to get people to handle the current set of extension initiations that have been submitted. I'm trying to get people who have extension experience so they are aware of the breadth of work that extension does and not send you a deferral because they didn't realize that extension worked in certain areas. So I'm working on that. I'm hoping that we can get through those initiations by COB tomorrow, if not early next week. So you guys can log results against those. All right. All right, we've captured the chat box in the recording. And so if you have other things, I have to run to another meeting, but if you have other comments or questions, please put them in the chat box now. I will let the recording go for a little bit so we capture all of that. But thank you all for coming. Aaron, did you have some final comments?
No, we just thank you all very much. These are great comments and great discussion. As always, we learn something every time, and certainly we'll always be deliberating behind the scenes and also trying to capture and answer as many questions as possible. We had hoped that we gave you a lot of good information and ideas of how this annual report's going to work. We expect you're going to have a round of questions. In the meantime, we'll be busy at work trying to provide updates to our FAQs, provide additional information through guides, as well as just continue to put the word out in different forums that we have. And again, we have another webinar scheduled in a few weeks, and in the week we'll try to get answers to some of the highly anticipated and important questions that we've been touching on today. So we thank you for your patience.
Yeah, and thanks, Ronnie, for doing the demo.
Yeah.
Of course, happy to.
Hey, Aaron. So Ohio was one of the states that has never reported together with our 1890s since they just became an 1890
Right.
in 2014,
Yep, Central
2015. Yeah, so does that mean we have now 8,000 characters in those executive summaries for both institutions? Or
You're right. Yes. Yep. You
because
have
we've
your
never
own form.
reported together, so I'm just not.
You won't be reporting together, Debbie.
Okay.
5 states that have separated will be separate. You'll see each other's you'll see all lists of critical issues.
Okay.
If, you know, and if it's the case that you guys aren't doing any work on that, you can make that, and vice versa. You'll have your own executive summary there.
So Ohio State will have an executive summary separate from Central State's,
That's correct.
but I can still see their critical issues and they can still see mine.
Yes, but they won't necessarily see anything else. They won't see or projects that don't belong to them.
Okay, because I can see projects that belong to them. Just
I-
FYI.
Yeah, it might be, we did list them and we need to correct that a little bit. It was more for a NIFA view to be able to do that, but we can correct that. We also know that too, it's possible that they got aligned within report. And so we may have to do some corrections there.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, Catherine, I think I could take one more question, and I think we probably should close this down, and we'll pick it back up next time.
Thanks so much, Erin. I appreciate it. I put the question to Ronnie, direct message her in the chat. So same question, Ronnie. I was just, you know, we have our org, assistant org admin, they manage the projects locally. And even for people that are the state contributors, I'm trying to figure out how we monitor the results. It's super clean and clear in the annual report builder. You know, you show us those that have 0 results, but that's too late for us to hound the people that haven't submitted them, right? So is the idea that we manage this like in an export Excel sheet out of the system to figure, do we have to click through each project to figure out what doesn't have a result? I'm just thinking through the monitoring piece, which hopefully you have some insights on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Erin, you can jump in whenever, but I know at this point that we're building this feature to try to help this process, like move it along and give you the opportunity to do it in the system. We also recognize that this is not, or there's definitely a new timeline for like this, or not like a new timeline, but it's a new feature and there are some bugs to work out. Unfortunately, as much as we want to be able to incorporate the ability to view results, like the numbers of them in other places, with the timeline that we have, I don't think it's going to happen this year. Definitely will happen next year as something as improvements. And it's one of those things that I think that as we think through this and as people use the system, which is, you know, we did a lot of research ahead of time, but really a lot of this stuff, as you're talking about right now, is only really going to come out when people are actively starting to use it. And so once everybody has kind of gone through the process, I will have like setting up like user interviews to talk through like how it was, what was like really bad, what was really good, what needs to be changed, and those kinds of things. So definitely not, because we are not you guys, we want to hear from you, but sometimes there'll be like little things, unfortunately, like this that will like do a little bit of a mess. So it might be a little difficult this year and kind of infuriating, but hopefully we can catch that for next year. So apologies.
So just to be clear though, we'll see in the annual report builder after the research project deadline, everybody that didn't submit it. So there'll probably be even more this year because it's going to be hard for us to track that, right? So we kind of get a pass this year. I'm trying to clean that up because otherwise we're going to have to click through all 500, 600 projects on a regular basis to figure out when people are turning stuff in, right? Am I thinking about that right? And then I'll stop talking, I promise.
Oh, you're fine. It's best of my understanding. Unfortunately, yes, I think you're thinking about that correctly. I think it's just unfortunately due to how the timelines have lined up this year. Erin, do you have any insight?
Yeah, we recognize the issue.
Okay.
You know, when we were thinking about the annual report, I agree. I think you're going to really like that insight, especially at a different level, but tactically trying to like charge it up and see where, you know, things are amiss earlier would be certainly of an advantage. And we're looking at what we can do. We want to set expectations there. In terms of the smaller projects, we hope that's not too bad. So if you're thinking about, you know, McIntyre Stennis, for example, which I know is sort of outside the annual report, Yeah, that might be the reality, but hopefully that's a manageable number. But obviously, when you get to the hundreds, that's a lot of repetitive work, and we'll see what we can do. Just keep us apprised of how it's going. You know, as you're looking into that. I think right now we just want to get the message out to get this, you know, get the process started.
Yeah, in the future, I mean, we can monitor as org admins once we have the annual report builder and, you know, reach out to our colleagues. But now the timing of the annual report builder coming out is after the deadline. So that's the conundrum this year. So I just want to recognize that we will be probably largely remiss in more projects than usual that are going to have a nothing to report, because it's going to be really challenging and inefficient for us to try to manage getting those in on time.
Right, and I think that's a really important message as part of our discussions here that we're going to probably have very shortly to talk about that issue about, you know, what has to be done, how do we help people monitor, and those kinds of things. Those are good questions. I will say that we've always tried to be as reasonable and deliberative as we can. We've often said both internally and externally, you know, this is the year we're going to need some flexibility as we transition. So we've got that in mind, and we hope that this is a thing that you can use, you know, to drive better quality and participation. But we also don't want it to be such a shock that it, you know, reverberates in a negative way either.
We should have a better mechanism for your issue that you're outlining there, Catherine, next year, for next year's submission.
Great, thanks.
Okay, I know that we're over. We love spending time with you all, but we'd love to regroup, get as many of these questions answered as we can. If we didn't have a chance, we always appreciate the feedback. But I think we should probably end it there.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.